Okay, cool. So we're going to start 0000. If there's a recap, we will watch it. So if everybody presses play on three, 1, 2, 3.
What is the problem with the shrimp?
I believe they're Jewish, and I don't believe you eat shrimp if you're Jewish. I could be wrong.
Yeah, that's correct. It's non-kosher.
Thanks. I'm not used to kosher eating. Unfortunately, in Germany, sad history, you know.
It's safe to say that this show has very Gilmore Girls vibes, but doesn't have the very conservative air of the CW, right?
Oh yeah, lots of freedom with Amazon.
Yeah, you got the Amazon feel from the tree moment.
I think that's the reason we don't get new Gilmore Girls episodes. They prefer doing Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, where they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, very possible.
I do love the Easter eggs, like her running around with the bleach. It makes very reminiscent of Lane.
Yes, of course.
Hey, what's your timestamp, Lee?
7 minutes and 2 seconds, honey. Hey, I know that face.
Oh my god, that's so good.
She is excellent.
And Bootsy, rest in peace.
She just noticed something.
Are these two gonna have an issue?
Yikes.
She keeps track of the laughs.
She's a good housewife.
The perfect housewife.
Oh, there you go.
This is where I joined in last night.
Why do I feel like if I say these two are sweet, that's gonna bite me in the ass?
You should heed that feeling.
Oh? Where's she going? Oh, okay. Okay, I get it.
This is my nightmare thinking I should do this instead of sleeping. Oh my god.
I would not have done well in this time frame.
No, I like sleep and being comfortable way too much.
Oh, amen.
But yeah,
I
we were.
have,
Go ahead,
sorry.
Claudia.
I never do things like that, never wear makeup or anything. I wouldn't have gotten a husband probably.
That's very true. Yeah, I would have been happily a very happy spinster.
Hey, but cats are great, so that's fine.
We were saying last night that like the face cream would have been all over the pillow.
Oh yeah,
There's no
like
way.
unless you were like bolted to the bed in that one position.
She probably doesn't sleep deep to wake up on time, so she probably never moves all night, so her face should be fine.
She does look beautiful. She did a good job.
I would hate a man who doesn't notice anything.
Yeah, I was
So
gonna say, would he not notice that she woke up in full makeup, or does he think she just looks like that?
And this has been going on for 4 years because they've been married for that long. Like,
oof.
that's crazy.
Yeah, I'm sure he thinks she looks like that.
I don't know how many of you guys have seen One Day at a Time, the Netflix version, but this reminds me very much of Lydia.
It doesn't matter how often I watch this show, I always see him as Monk. I cannot stop doing that.
Oh no, a creepy doll. Oh no, no, no. Oh no, there's so many of them.
What are you talking about?
I think she was talking about all the dolls.
Oh, okay. I was kind of thinking it was the
Oh, you
dolls.
thought I was freaking about the children?
I don't know.
There's two. That is a big baby. Or am I just not around babies enough, or is that just a really big baby?
I think breastfeeding babies are much bigger, so probably it was more usual in that time. I don't know.
That's fair.
I feel like when she was carrying the blanket, it was probably a doll.
Oh, I bet. Absolutely.
And we don't know how old the baby is, so
Yeah,
it's
that was
probably not a
definitely a
newborn.
doll.
It looks like a doll in the
Yeah, the way she
whatever
just
it's
jostled
called.
that pram. Oh my
The
lord.
Yeah, this part is insane.
Her whole life is like a nightmare for me, like from the beginning to the end. Besides cooking, that's fun, but everything else, thanks, no.
Measuring her ankles?
Measuring every day for 10 years. What?
Hey, I know that actress. I think she was in Faking It. I need to go look.
She was also in Bunheads.
She's also in the revival. She's in the 30-something gang.
Oh yeah, of course. Yes, yes, yes. I also have no idea what Bunheads is about. Same as this. Maybe there are some buns or people with heads or both.
Wow, it's about dancers. That's what they're called here.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah, ballet dancers wear buns on their head, basically.
Oh,
You
well,
were
that makes
extremely
sense.
accurate with your assessment, though.
Oh, I mean, spot on. Hire me. I don't know to do what, but
You can do all the captions for Netflix.
exactly.
These people have buns and heads and buns on their heads.
Tune in now.
Do you see what happened, Lee?
Oh. Oh dear. I'm not sure that's really how comedy works.
No, it doesn't. And it shows in her face, and he feels guilty. You can see it in his face.
Oh, no, I don't like this. No, not at all. Oh! Oh, I'm gonna slap him. I'm gonna go through this. I'm gonna go through the screen and slap him. How dare he?
But did you catch where she said, "Oh, things are better faster"?
I didn't. I may have missed that part. I just heard her saying she felt silly and then him saying, "Oh, you'll learn," and I didn't hear anything else.
She also said she has to go. I guess she has to go back and apologize to June for.
What?
They talked about the daughter, yes.
They're
Not the
measuring
boy.
her forehead.
Gotta start them young.
Oi, oi, oi. Push him out of the car. Just push him.
Naming the moth. That's something Lorelai would do.
Oh,
Ted the
absolutely.
moth.
He could wear the clothes he has on instead of the, whole thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Just put it on backwards.
She's the only character I like in the pilot so far.
Same here. I definitely think like these sarcastic women that Alex Borstein portrays, like she's definitely in her element. She's in her bag. It's just so good.
Delayed reaction, but the Ginsberg reference made me think of the movie Kill Your Darlings, and that's something we should all definitely watch at some point. Is he gonna make fun of her?
Nope.
He's bombing though.
He forgot the dime size holes.
He's so bad.
Oh dear.
He's so bad.
This is giving me such secondhand anxiety. I hate it so much.
Someone trying to hide behind her head. It's so sweet and embarrassing.
Yeah, I put in Discord. I can't believe I'm watching this twice.
Oh, they're not as cuddly this time.
Joel's moody.
And of course, it's her fault. Oh man.
Oh, Oh no, yeah, my gut instinct that I should not have called them sweet was correct. This James Dean wannabe. What?
Yes.
And using her suitcase.
He's not a good man. Not behaving like a good man.
Is she gonna go into stand up because she's a lot funnier than him?
I don't know. We'll see. Oof.
Kill him! Kill him with the suitcase.
I feel so bad for her.
Men.
And he wants to be a comedian.
Yeah, timing's not important for comedy.
I wonder why Amy Sherman Palladino loves it so much to have couples who don't talk about anything important ever.
Yeah, I'm curious about that as well.
I mean, they don't know each other at all. He has no idea what she does. She has no idea what he does. So it's really sad.
It's not thinning. Jesus Christ.
See, Mom blamed her too. What did you?
I
Yeah,
wonder
that's
if that's
right.
a time thing. Like, was the wife always at fault, or is it just like in that family, in that situation, Jewish family? I have no idea.
I think
I
it's a
think it.
time thing.
I think it's a bit of both. I think there will like that kind of mindset was very prominent, but I think it's still carried over. Like there's still people who, when there's a breakup or a marriage that ends, people will always say to the wife, "Well, what were you doing or not doing that caused that?"
Yeah, that idea that it's the wife's job to keep the husband happy.
It's the first time watching I was so mad about him, but now I think it was both fault. They never talked about anything, so it's both faults. It's not just him having an affair. She doesn't know what he likes. She doesn't know anything about his jobs or his dreams, anything.
I don't know. I would disagree from what I've seen so far. I think she did everything she possibly could to support his dreams, and she knew his job. She just didn't know that he was so unhappy in it.
That's what I mean. You need two people being invested in a relationship, and she tried to be the perfect wife, but she wasn't for him. She was just what she was meant to do, probably what her mother told her to be.
It's so sad because he was just terrible to her.
Yeah, no, don't make him come back. No, no.
I think that's a time thing that they expect them to be together again because a single mother with two children was probably horrible for the whole family. And I feel so sad for her because she is so much in a worse situation than he is.
True. I mean, their value was wrapped up in their family, and if they didn't have a husband. Is anybody wondering where these kids are?
Yeah, I didn't see them at the grandparents this time.
Oh, they had stayed out late, so they would have been at the grandparents asleep.
A cat! Oh,
Are you hearing that voice on the mic?
I heard the voice. I was more thinking this looks like my theory is coming true, but I need to pay attention to the voice.
You don't really.
Tiff, you're just joining us. We are at 41:52.
By the way, that last presenter was Danny Strong.
Was who, sorry?
Danny Strong.
Oh, no way! I can't believe I missed that. Did we even see him or did we only just hear him?
Nope, you just heard his voice.
Oh, amazing.
She sounds so much like Penny Lynn Lord.
Yeah, Amy doesn't like pennies.
Oh, so that just happened. Oh no.
Look who it is.
Incredible. I'm a con now. The Karl Marx.
I want all those records behind her.
I also wouldn't be thrilled if someone said they were going to show up at 10 in the morning. Well, okay then.
So what'd you think, Lee?
I don't know what I expected. Like I said, I quite literally went in knowing nothing but the title, and I enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I thought that was a very good episode. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I suppose I'm trying to think because I had no expectations. I could have been greatly annoyed. I could have hated it. I could have loved it. I could have been like, but I enjoyed that. I like this premise. I think it's going to be a fun season. Welcome up, Shauna.
Well, thank you. I'm just sending out some letters. So I'm just kind of hanging out and listening to you guys.
Nice. So I know some of you have already seen it before, but what are your kind of I like how they set it up. I like that it kind of started. By the way, guys, on the beanbags, if anyone wants to come up and discuss, please feel free to. I like that they set it up kind of that this was a very sweet couple, and I was like, oh, okay, well, this is going to be, something about just her being a housewife. So I do appreciate that they set it up that way and then just abandoned that whole thing. Because I was wondering a little bit like, well, how are they what's the plot gonna be, As a housewife, what is her plot gonna be? So I greatly appreciate this diversion from that.
I have a question for you, Lee, since you went in blind. Do you think that Midge changed from the beginning before she met Joel and the beginning of their marriage to when we see her in present day?
So like when we're kind of getting flashbacks to when she was married, or do you mean by kind of like the start of the episode to the end of the episode?
The flashbacks.
Um, I think she kept a lot of her energy. Like, she was obviously quite a quirky character. She had a good sense of humor. And I think she suppressed it to a point where she was just trying to put her energy into her husband, because she was, she was just trying to make sure to do what he needed. He needed her to cook and take care of the kids and, get him the good spot at the comedy lounge. So I think, but then again, when she talked to him, you could still, or anyone really, you could still hear her humor. You could still get pieces of that, but it definitely was subdued because so much of her time was not her. She wasn't doing things for herself. So I don't think we got to see as much of her being herself as we did in the flashbacks.
And the only reason I asked that is because when Joel was leaving, he said, "This isn't the life that I expected." Or so it made me think, what life did he expect? Because he did marry her.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually very interesting to think on. I wonder, because I suppose I don't know if he comes back, if we talk more about their marriage, or if it's just literally that only existed in the first episode to kind of set her up on this path. I don't know. Um, but I suppose it'd be interesting to. I wonder if he kind of I suppose he doesn't want the upper West Side life. He didn't want the rich life, I suppose. It's the only thing he would have known going into marriage. But I wonder, oh, did he not want kids? Did he, like, what is it that he didn't want? Or did he think he wanted it and just the actual reality of it, the whole, oh, a solid family, just didn't appeal to him in the way he thought it would, I wonder.
Yeah, I just
I
think it's
think.
so interesting. Sorry.
Sorry. I think in this episode, for me, it feels like she's copying her mother and expected him to be like her father, and he isn't, and he didn't expect her to copy her mother, be more like she was, like you see in the flashbacks, more rebellious and everything. So that's what I meant. It was like both her fault that it didn't work out.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Claudia, did you have a hard time following along without your subtitles, or do you think you're going to be able to still join?
The thing is, I watched season one, I think twice. Once as it came out, and a second time before I started season two. So I probably should be fine in season one, but I'm probably not able to follow the other episodes if we talk more. Today was perfect. Because we didn't talk so much, so I could turn on my TV and watch it. But it's really hard in general to follow without subtitles in only English for a non-native speaker, because they speak fast. Comedy is all about speaking fast, and it's really hard for me to follow and understand all the words with no possibility to see how the word is written. So if I don't understand anything, I need to figure out how it's written, to look it up in the dictionary. It's really, really hard. It's hard with Gilmore Girls, but it's much harder with this show. So I will see. Probably you lose me in season 2 or latest season 3.
Are we watching? I know we're watching season 1 as part the first slate, but are we actually going to continue with
Yes.
the next? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I think I remember seeing John say that this might be the exception. Yeah, okay. I'm trying to kind of make predictions. I really hope, well, I assume based on kind of what we saw as the setup, that we see more of the bartender. Did we actually get her name? I don't remember if we've heard her name yet.
Her name is Susie.
Susie, perfect. Okay, I really hope we see more of Susie, because I think, I don't imagine that I'm an unpopular opinion to say that she was kind of like my favorite part of the episode. And I'm excited to see more of Midge. I think she's a lot of fun. And hey, who doesn't love a bit of drama after a breakup and like a bit of catharsis? Who doesn't love that? So that's going to be fun to watch.
I just realized something. The name Susie, that is the name that was accidentally printed on Suki and Jackson's
Yes,
wedding invitations.
it was.
And Alex Bornstein was supposed to play Suki.
It all comes back around.
Repeat that again, Steph.
Suki's wedding invitations, and Gilmore Girls, there was a misprint, and they had put Susie, and Suki was like, "You don't look like a Susie."
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think Amy Sherman Palladino doesn't remember that thing. It's such a small detail and she always forgets name and everything. So I think we remember it because we watch the show so often, but probably not the writers themselves.
Oh, a lot of the Gilmore Easter eggs are probably coincidence, for sure.
You know, I just realized something that I think is kind of exciting, is that not by her own fault, you know, she was doing everything that she could do to fit in to what she was supposed to be. You know, the perfect housewife, the perfect mother, you know, the measuring, you know, her body. But because of Joel leaving, it automatically breaks that. Like, she can't be perfect anymore, which, going back to what you were saying, Lee, you know, that her kind of tamping down of her like real true self, like while she was married, like there's a good chance that that's no longer going to be there. So we'll get to see hopefully some really amazing character development come out.
Yeah, I definitely hope so. I suppose I would say, just kind of like bringing it back to the first scene, she talked about how she always had a plan since she was little, and I'd assume that was much less her plan than was kind of, well, like some of it could have been her plan, but it was mostly influence from family and society. I would say that she knew she had to go to college and find a husband. Um, but yeah, so I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I suppose, like, not to bring back to not to bring everything back to Gilmore Girls, but like, it's nice to see characters when there's a whole life plan laid out for you, and you know something happens and your life plan changes. So I think that's going to be a really fun story, especially, and because she's so, like, I picked up on it throughout the episode that she's very good comedically. So I'm looking forward to seeing where she goes. Is she gonna just have like the biggest career known to man? Is she just gonna keep performing to that crowd? What's gonna happen? I'm excited to find out. And Claudia, I think were you flashing your mic there for a second?
Yeah, I wanted to speak at the same moment and then I just turned it off again. I think it's for me interesting that she was losing herself after finding a husband and he didn't like that. And that's for me an interesting storyline because you can see, or you in the flashback, you saw her walking around in front of the house being practically naked, and that was how she was before she got married. And he probably fell in love with her being rebellious and everything, and she changed completely. And I'm curious to see what's happening, even if I know a part of it, what's happening if she is more like herself again and finding her true self again.
Absolutely. I'm getting a taste of my own medicine here, in what I do to other people, because I definitely just kind of want to watch the next episode already. I just want to, because like that was, I have to say, for a pilot, like I know a lot of us have talked about and kind of recognized that many shows pilot episodes are kind of hit or miss. Most of the time they're just, oh hi Chris, sorry I didn't see you come in, honey. The pilot episodes can be very hit or miss, because they're just trying to set up so much and introduce you to so many characters, and it can feel a little kind of tedious, or like it's a very, I think, known thing that sometimes you just have to get through a pilot and the first few episodes before you can start enjoying a show. But like that was a very good pilot in my opinion. I think there was no point where I was kind of like, okay, yeah, this feels very pilot-y. I kind of just want to get on with the story. It put us in at a great place to set up the story, and the timing of it over the hour-long episode, I think, was just really well done. So as far as pilots go, I really enjoyed that. Are there, just I was going to say, is there anyone down on the beanbags who wants to come up and kind of share? I know some other people were also watching for the first time, so I definitely want to, or not, you don't have to have only been watching it for the first time, but always come up and tell us your opinions either way.
It's an excellent pilot. That's all I've got to say about that.
I definitely agree, Chris. Hi, Megan.
Hey, I'm dying from a cold, so I'm not going to speak much, but I really enjoyed the pilot. It was really good.
I had the feeling after I watched the pilot the first time and now again that I missed so much stuff that I need to know more about the time period to understand a lot of it. Often I think, oh, is it a time thing? Is it a Mitch thing? What is it? So I think I never did it, but I thought, oh, we need so much more information about what is in Gilmore Girls. Okay, we live in this time, we know what's like typical and not, even if you're not living in the USA. Information.
I think that's really interesting from a non-American perspective, because something that this show really does is show a lot of what, not just New York, but what American post-war prosperity looked like. And this is 1958 and they're Jewish, and so there is a couple of like jokes in there about like, oh, just a couple years ago things were really different, and in America, especially in New York City, I think that Jewish post-war experience was very specific. And so there's a lot going on. They're obviously very wealthy. But there's a general American post-war prosperity going on with someone like Joel, who has a desk job at an office, which is very much happening in the 50s in America. Is even in cities, people are moving from like more factory work to like office work and white collar jobs. And so like that's something that's happening. It's a very American thing. So I think we're seeing a lot of that, and it never occurred to me that that might not make sense to someone if that's not their history, right? Like, I mean, that's kind of a little bit what I studied in college, was like that era of um what was going on at the time, like where people lived and how they lived and what kind of money they had. And and this is a really interesting family, that they are Jewish, they are New Yorkers, they live on the Upper West Side, when many Jewish New Yorkers did not. They lived, I think there was a bit of a divide between like the haves and the have nots. A lot of the other Jewish New Yorkers lived down
Weren't they down
in
in
like
the tenants and stuff?
in the tenants, and yeah, in the tenements and all of that. And like there's something here with the Maisel family and Midge's family, that they're from a different social class, right? Like they have money, they have they have two classic six post-war, or actually they're Yeah, they're post-war buildings because of elevators. That's how you differentiate in New York between post-war and pre-war. Is pre-war typically doesn't have an elevator, and these are beautiful, huge apartment buildings where they have the money for these classic sixes, which is a whole floor of a luxury apartment building, and they have two on top of one another, right? They've got the parents, and then they've got Joel and Midge's place. So that's a huge sign of their wealth and their standing, is that they have that. But I don't know. I think there's just a lot going on culturally in this show that is very American. It's supremely American, and at the time too, down at like where the Gaslight is, right downtown, you have the counterculture starting to happen. So you have Allen Ginsberg and all of the people who were artists in the West Village, sort of making their art at that time. And it's defined now as the counterculture, like that's what was happening in the art world. So Midge and Joel are going between these two things, and you can see that she's kind of like excited for the night she gets to slum it downtown, and so is Imogen, right? Imogen is like, ooh, we're gonna go downtown, like it's gonna be a night out. But that's not their normal reality. They're going to see where the artists like thrive. And that was very much what was going on in New York City, and I think in the US as a whole, is that the art culture was sort of underground, and all of those famous writers that are famous to us now were in clubs like that and bars, and um, you know, creating what ended up becoming so canon to us. But at the time, it really wasn't. It was absolutely, what is that guy doing? What is Allen Ginsberg writing? Like, we don't understand, like, so it's kind of an interesting, I think, American history snapshot
It
to
is.
me.
It is. It's interesting because I talk with friends of mine who are Jewish and who live in New York, and I think I said it before you showed up, like it was so typical for the grandparents. But I'm a German, and Germany was totally destroyed after World War II, and
Of
it was
course.
a completely different life. And the time where we watching, it was a time where Germany just was divided into two parts with a big wall between it. And that was a really completely different life we talk about. And it's completely different history lessons. And of course, I learned a lot about history in my country and not so much about America in that time. So it's for me really a lot of things I know nothing about. And I'm really confused about a lot of things. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
Diana, sorry,
well,
I was just gonna very quickly say, I wonder, like you said, you studied a little bit about this in college. Would
mhm.
you want to do like a gab session about this kind of historical
I
period
mean,
to give
yeah, like
context to folks?
I'd have to go back and like really look at some stuff, but I actually studied more through the lens of like I was very interested, especially in New York City, because I'm from New York, and my whole family my grandparents were born in New York, so I have like super deep roots in New York City, and no one as far back as my grandparents came from another place. So, there's a lot of interest to me, is like where people lived and how they lived, right? So what happens in this time is that the suburbs are being created, but Midge and Joel aren't suburban. They are living a very fancy suburban like lifestyle uptown, where they have space and a fancy job and fancy things. Whereas a lot of other people, like if you watch like Mad Men, right, like you've got, it's the same era, and Don Draper lives outside the city, and so there's like a very much an interesting piece of history there, is that he doesn't live there. He works in Midtown Manhattan, but he lives in a very, very big house outside the city. And so that was something that was happening at the time. So that's really what I was interested in a post-war universe, like how, like, okay, in the 10 years after the war ended, like what was going on with where people lived and how they lived. And a lot of people um got houses. I mean, like the GI Bill, allowed a lot of people white people, sorry, to get homes, in the suburbs. And so that's like a big deal where people started moving out of the cities for the first time
Yeah,
because they
there's
didn't
that
have to
big
work there.
housing boom after the war.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, planned communities became a thing. And that's such an American thing is, planned developed communities outside of cities. Like that's, so that's what's going on at the time of this show. And, they haven't done that because they have a classic six, like why would they leave? So like they have, an amazing place to live and a very comfortable place to live. But anyway, yeah, like I would have to like do more like research, which I would love to do only because like it was my favorite era to study. Like my mom was born in 1958, so like this takes place in 1958, so I'm kind of like, oh, that's interesting. Like, were my grandparents living kind of like this? I always wonder, they weren't.
But Diana,
Um
it's also when you look at Midge and her family,
yeah,
they are in the kind of place where image and the way that they present is really important to the women. They're
yeah,
still housewives, but they're a little bit more than your standard housewives. They don't just cook and clean. They have people who clean for them. They still cook,
yes,
but they have to look a certain way. They have to socialize a certain way. They have to, when they give parties, they want certain people there. It's a status thing for those women, where the men, they're working, they're earning, and the women are taking care of them, but they
right,
also have help. Where probably pre-war, some of those people that maybe didn't have as much money, or the people even post-war that don't have as much money, they're not living the way Midge and her mother do.
yeah,
So it's very, so Midge is in a real particular niche in that way, and then she's also kind of jumping out of it by going down to the village, and like you were
right.
saying, and mixing
Well,
in with the artists, because normally a housewife in the Upper West Side wouldn't do that.
Well, and I actually wrote this on Discord in our Maisel non-spoilers chat, but there's a moment that like I thought about later where, if we're going to talk about like what's going on with Joel and like what, why now, what's happening, and we were talking about this a little earlier, but um I thought about it again where, at the wedding, she makes the joke about the shrimp, which is obviously a big no-no at a Jewish wedding to have shrimp. And so it erupts in this kind of chaos with her father and like everyone's yelling. And if you look back at that scene, she and Joel look at each other and smile, and they're very much like in on this. And she's just gotten through telling the story of their relationship, where you see in the flashbacks aren't really matching the story of their relationship that she's telling to the public, right? That she's telling to all of their friends.
The image.
It's they went to burlesque shows and they were, like having sex in the park and like, like all these things, right? And I think what's really interesting is 4 years later, she's become settled into the role that she's meant to play, which is the housewife. That's why she went to college, was to find a husband, to become a housewife and become a member of her society in that way. And he still got his eye on that like sort of counterculture, right? Which is like burlesque clubs and, and kind of participating in a different type of culture, like nighttime and nightlife and like all of that. And so I think it's really interesting that he is still kind of on that, where he wants to go and be like professionally known in those spaces and as a comedian for whatever reason, because he's not funny. But she's kind of beyond it, but she's like humoring him, right? She thinks that like, oh, that was a fun thing that we used to do anyway, so let's just go down, let me change into my pants and we'll go downtown. And I think the impasse is that she doesn't realize that he is still kind of firmly in that space, and she's not. They have children, she's like, you have a job, you go to work, you provide for us, like this is what's supposed to happen. And that's, as a woman in that era, as a Jewish woman in that era, she doesn't really have any other choices. Like, she needed to go to college to find a husband. That's what you do. And him leaving is actually pretty catastrophic for her life. Like, she doesn't have any options to, like make it on her own. That is not what happens in the 1950s. You know, like women do not make it on their own.
Right. She
They
may be
must be married.
educated, but she's not
Right.
expected to work, and nobody's going to want to hire her because they're going to think of her as a housewife and a mother more than an
Exactly.
employee.
And my grandmother worked in, department stores and like in this time, and like, if you were married, you got fired. Like you had to leave. That's like what a thing that like my mom would tell me, and I'd be like, what do you mean? Like when she got married, she had to leave that job. And they're like, oh, well, they didn't allow married women. Like, they didn't allow women with children to have jobs. Like because, there was this whole idea that if you have children, you won't be focused on this job. And, like I mean, when my mother told me that in the 50s, or actually earlier, because my grandmother had children earlier, she had to leave her job. She worked at like New York Life, like an insurance company in Manhattan. She had to leave. And I was like, but wait a minute. And my mom was kind of like, oh no, like married women weren't allowed to work. Women with children weren't allowed to work.
It's very much a world.
It's a totally different world. And so like that's what Midge is up against with Joel walking out. She has nothing. She has absolutely nothing. And she, not just the social stigma, but there is no way for her to make money. Like, this idea of maybe, performing in clubs at night is kind of all she's got. Like that is the path, because she can't provide for herself any other way.
And super controversial path at that. So, I mean, women just didn't do that back then.
Right. Or a certain kind of woman did, right?
Right.
Certainly
Right.
not a housewife with children. Right.
On the Upper West Side.
On the
from
Upper West
a
Side.
prominent Jewish family.
Yes. who they got the rabbi, you know what I mean? Like for sure.
I love that storyline where they were so excited about getting the rabbi after upsetting him at the wedding 4 years earlier. It's just
I
like
know
this big
they've been waiting to make good on that for the past 4 years.
yes, for a long time. And then Joel, the idiot that he is, leaves her the night before. I mean, it's like he's this guy who married a woman that's much smarter and wittier than he is, and he's just now realized that he can't handle it.
Well,
It's just
there's that, but there's also the fact that like he doesn't care because it doesn't actually affect him.
right.
Like he couldn't care less about the rabbi because at the wedding she made the joke and he laughed. Like he didn't care what the rabbi thought of the shrimp. Like he doesn't give a crap. Like so
And everyone's going to blame her anyway for him leaving.
I
It's
mean,
always
for
going to
sure.
be her fault.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very sad in that way. Claudia, I don't know if we at all helped you. Diana would have much more than my comments.
Can you hear me? I changed to.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I changed to earplugs. It's actually interesting because I often have problems with cultural differences to understand, and I ask a lot, and I'm used to all the Gilmore Girls stuff because I had 2-3 years time to ask all the questions, and now I need to ask all the questions again about a different time. So like it's completely different because in Germany a lot of women were alone because their men died in World War II, or they were still somewhere prisoners, and it's such a different world for me. And unfortunately, I don't know a lot about Jewish people. I learned about American Jewish people in the last 2 years with Gilmore Girls friends, but I think I was in my middle 20s till I met the first Jewish person in Germany, and that's really a sad story if you think about it. And so it helped, but it also is overwhelming. So I probably need some time.
I think partly, and maybe I don't know, Diana, if you would think this, but the show is very different than Gilmore Girls. But other than the religion, the Jewish versus the white Protestant, kind of Anglo-Saxon Protestant, the Gilmore family, Lorelai's parents, are in a very similar kind of economic situation, social status as Midge's family would be, although they don't live in New York City. So it's kind of like they have those same kind of like expectations of society and image and all that kind of stuff, even though they're in different times. But her parents, Lorelai's parents, would have grown up in the time that Midge is in now, in a way, when you think about it. and so their whole idea of image and society and the clubs and the Daughters of the Revolution. I mean, Midge's family wouldn't be Daughters of the Revolutions or anything, but that kind of I don't know. Do you know what I'm getting at,
I know
Diana?
what
Like
you're
that,
getting at, but I think that's more of a social American, or maybe even worldwide, but a social um construct of, what men do, what women do, like all of
right?
that, what rich people do, what non-rich people do. um
But like
what
Midge's world is more like Emily's would have been versus Lorelai's in this
Yes,
Yes,
but
case.
I
but
would
there's a
agree.
main.
I think for me it's like it's a Lorelai story again, but if Lorelai would have stayed and find a husband and get pregnant with him, I think the whole storyline is very similar at the beginning, like just in a different direction. She didn't get pregnant at 16, she stayed, she did what her parents wanted her to do, and now she's still not happy. So,
But
yeah.
Midge is like what? Midge would be about 21, 22 when she got married, if that, maybe
I
20,
would say about
22.
20 even, if she met him in college, like,
Yeah. So she's like in her mid 20s at this point.
yeah.
So but I just meant like if you wanted to try to figure out her like social economic status kind of situation to explain part of why she's the way that she is, it would be like what Emily Gilmore had to go through. She went to college, she met a husband, she became a housewife and helped him to thrive in his business and social circles. And that's kind of what Midge was expected to do, but
Yeah.
her husband left her high and dry.
Well, yeah, I think of course, like that's all, yeah, for sure. The thing that's really interesting though, that would be really fun for the show to explore, although I'm not sure if they do. I really don't remember. But like being Jewish at this time is still a big deal because there is a
Yes.
significant amount of racism that happens towards Jewish people at this time in the US. Like and so, it's always kind of a head scratcher for me, like, well, like, I mean, yes, on one level, their family, like Emily and Richard, would be the Midge and Joel, right? But on the other hand, not at all, because Emily and
Well,
Richard are white
that's what I was saying. If you
Protestant.
take out
Yeah.
the religious part, the
If you
other
take out,
things,
yeah, but like there was such a significant amount. I mean, there still is a lot of anti-Semitism in this
yeah.
country, and so like that, and it was very prevalent at that time, like incredibly prevalent. So what you're gonna see, I think, is that the reason why their dinner is 30 people and the rabbi is coming is because the community is incredibly insular, because they really aren't allowed in other spaces as Jews. So it's a very
Tight
they're
knit.
kind of it's not just socioeconomic, it's the fact that they are Jewish, and there's a lot of anti-Semitism. I mean, we're not really sure what Joel's job is, but I bet you there's no one there working there that isn't Jewish. So that's also happening in America at the time, especially in New York.
Yeah, it's like the United States went in and may have fought against what was happening in World War II and what was happening against the Jewish population, but that didn't make them any more like
Yeah.
compassionate.
And I think, like, if you're, like another like fun show to watch to get more, like a little bit more of the time period to see like those things being discussed is Mad Men. Mad Men is the exact same time period going into the 60s. And there's a ton of anti-Semitism in the show, in terms of like some of the comments or, what have you, that sort of paints the picture, I think, a little bit more succinctly. But the fact that they are Jewish is really big for this show because they are very insular about their community, and that's also why him leaving leaves her high and dry, because the community will know, and like, of course, her mother all of a sudden is like, okay, we're not going to tell anyone, this is what, like their community, very much like the Gilmores, is all they have, it's what they live on, and so
I just
it's a
wanted to
big deal.
say it would have been the same if Emily would have been left by Richard. It would have been the same
Oh yeah.
reaction. So I think a lot would have been pretty similar. And if I think about like comparing these two shows, I think if Lorelai would have gone to university and marry Christopher, it would probably be her being pretty similar to Emily, and they would have stayed together probably because it was expected of them. And it feels for me like Joel wasn't like Christopher. He wasn't. He was from somewhere outside, and that was a problem. He didn't understand all the expectations the family had in him being a husband of her.
I actually, what you just said, Claudia, how this reaction would have been similar to if Richard had left Emily. I find it quite funny. I know it's not a side-by-side comparison, but if we take Midge kind of running around drunk in her nightgown with a bottle of wine in her hand, like how Emily reacted when she was gonna split with Richard and she was like stumbling around in her nightgown with her whiskey glass and her cigarette, like it is a very kind of high society reaction of
Yeah, and Emily was
marriage
probably
instability. Yeah,
And Emily was probably a wild, like, young adult too. Like stealing someone else's fiance is like a wild side. And I think a lot of that's probably why the Palladinos wrote it, because it has a lot of things they already wrote about. They just changed the time period and added some other things to get it started. So it feels really similar in a lot of things.
absolutely. So, guys, I have to head off, I'm afraid. If you guys want, this was very interesting, by the way, not just the discussion of the show. I greatly appreciate being able to listen to you guys talk about that time period in the context of New York and for Jewish people in particular. Yeah, like that's not stuff that we're taught about over here in Europe. It's not really something that we cover in the books. We cover kind of the Troubles and the Northern Irish struggle, and that's about it. We don't go far beyond England. So yeah, everything that we've like I can only speak for myself, but I think it, like any country really, like I find it very interesting in reverse, I suppose. Like I've known a lot of American people in my life because I've been in online fandoms quite a lot. And it's very interesting in reverse that we seem to pick up quite a lot of you guys' history through TV and whatnot. But in reverse, it doesn't seem to be something you guys have a lot of access to. Which I was
Well,
actually
I agree
thinking,
with
because
that. I mean,
oh, 100%.
Dairy Girls
Yeah.
is like the first real
I
show
was
that, like,
just about to mention
yeah.
Dairy Girls.
But it's like that's such an interesting show that we absolutely should watch. But like,
I
it's such
love that show, Diana.
it's so good. I mean, but for me, I was like, oh, I was never taught this history. And I love getting it through the lens of, like, kind of cheeky teenagers who are just being teens in a time that's
Absolutely.
really terrible. And like that's really interesting. It's a fantastic lens. But yeah, like you're right. Like we have the same. Like we don't really get a ton of the like authentic through the lens of the people who live there, about their history, in terms of art. And so, it's definitely similar on both ends, like, so I understand where you're coming from for sure.
Yeah, it's very funny to me that you immediately said Dairy Girls and that we should watch it, because I kid you not, that was the next sentence I was going into, was that I have been thinking for quite a while that I would love to watch Dairy Girls with you guys,
It's
but
a brilliant show.
wondering,
I mean, it's
yeah,
like it's so good. I've seen it twice. It's just so good that I was actually thinking about rewatching it again, and I was like, "Aren't they going to do another season? I really wish they'd do another season."
they've been doing another season for a few years. I think COVID definitely knocked their plans about. But yeah, there are plans for another season. I suppose I was wondering, more so because I know the community at large is mostly US based, and I always, I don't know. I suppose I wondered, would Dairy Girls be lost? Like a lot of the jokes, a lot of the knowledge that you need to kind of get the kind of jokes about what's going on at that time. Like my mother lived there, like on the border of the North and the South at that exact time period. So like it's very much it's very much my life. So I know the kind of intricacies of it.
It's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, Lee, because like for me personally, I knew a little bit of history and stuff about that area. Like when I was in school, they still did teach what they called world history on like a very kind of superficial level. But I don't even know if they do that anymore with people. But most of the world history was old world history, and then a little bit World War I and World War II related stuff. But when I've been traveling overseas, I learned a little bit about Ireland and English history and stuff like that. But yeah, that's a good point. Some people might not quite catch some of their humor.
Yeah, I think I I'm just imagining people who might not have any prior knowledge of England and Ireland's relations to each other coming into. Actually, I do have a very funny story relating to what I'm saying. I'm just imagining people kind of coming into the show and just immediately hearing everyone in the show attacking James because he's the only English character and being like, "Oh, why are they attacking James?"
It's
I actually
hilarious, though. It's just
it is
hilarious. And
very
they treat him
funny.
like a girl. I
It's
love it.
oh, I love it. He's a dairy girl, so of course they're gonna treat him like a girl. Um, what was I gonna say? Yeah, so when I was in my first year at university, I had a tutorial, and the tutorial was led by an American woman. It happens a lot. We get a lot of American grad students in my university, but I got the feeling that she didn't know much of Irish history. Um, Sorry, I'm just thinking about it. And like it was my first year, it was my first semester. It was very much like everyone was still trying to make friends with each other and find their people. And in this tutorial, somehow the topic of Catholics versus Protestants came up, and someone said that they were a prod, and I started shouting Dairy Girls quotes at them, which sounded to the American tutor like basically death threats because she didn't know that I was quoting a TV show that everyone else in the room knew. But she thought I was like
Evil,
hate
Lee.
crime.
Evil.
She thought I was 100% hate criming this poor woman for being prod, and
Oh,
and I swear to God, like if she hadn't just kind of tried to move it on as quickly as possible, if she'd like tried to pull me aside and like report me for hate criming someone based on their religion, like I could have gotten kicked out of school because she just did not grasp that I was quoting a TV show and everyone else in the room knew exactly what was happening. It was just very, very fun. But anyway, that went off track. I started saying that I needed to leave, and then suddenly I got onto the topic of Catholics versus prods. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, guys, this was really fun. Like I said, it was a very good. Oh no, Cindy messaged me. I said I was going to mention that. Cindy messaged me and said there are still some mementos from last night's Maisel event. If anyone didn't get one last night, there are still some available. So you can consider that a badge of honor for joining today or yesterday or both. And they're very pretty as well, so that's always a bonus. What was I going to say? Can you tell that I'm a bit kind of frazzled today? Like just a little. Oh, and the password is in the thread on Discord for the memento, so you don't have to work very hard. Yes, so I am going to head out. Thank you all for joining me for this watch/rewatch. It's very interesting to be a host and have no idea what's happening. It's a very interesting approach to be like, hey, I'm hosting this show where I genuinely don't know what's going to happen. It's very fun. I feel like John a little bit.
It's very entertaining. I like it a lot.
Oh, well, oh, I'm glad.
Not
It's
bad.
it's
it's good.
been
It's good of you to do this so that Claudia and Megan and some other people can catch up before Saturday morning, or our Saturday morning, your afternoon. Sarah
100%.
and everybody.
100%. And
Yes. Without the international, I would just be lost because, it's you didn't join in earlier, Chris and Diana, but I can only watch it in English in Germany now, and they cancelled all the subtitles, so it's really hard to do a watch party with it. So I will see what's happening in the next
That's
episode.
awful. I can't believe they did
It's
that.
Yeah, I think it's not popular at all here. They started to show it at the same time as in America, and I thought they changed it to German too, but I'm not sure. And now without subtitle, it's really hard to follow. especially in a watch party. So I think it probably dies down in the next months. I don't know. It doesn't sound like we will see another season, if it will be another season here. It's not liked. And I understand because, as I said, I understand a lot of things. I don't get it. And a lot of Germans don't have the possibility to watch it here, or they don't know about it. So it's really hard. A hard show for us.
I hope you do get to stick with us, at least for this season, Claudia. But then again, I completely understand why, like, especially we're talking and you're trying to focus on what's happening. I know it would be very overwhelming. So if you can't join anytime, we understand.
I think this watching was perfect because there wasn't a lot of talking. I could watch and still talk. I loved it. If it's like now, I probably stay. But if it's like it's usually in Gilmore Girls, that's too much.
Yeah, I think
You
we
guys
had
should
a
know.
good balance today. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
You guys should know we did not talk a lot in last night's pilot episode either, because there were a lot of people who have not seen it, and those of us who have didn't want to spoil anything. So there was not a lot of chatter during the show, just little
That
comments here
is,
and there.
That's
yeah.
awesome to know. That's perfect. I cannot join on Saturday because I'm at home at my parents and my nephew has birthday, but I can join next week and we will
Yay.
see. Thanks.
Thank you all for joining, for listening to me and my theories and my incorrect opinion on Joel being sweet in the first 5 minutes. That was a bust. But I was like, oh, they seem to like each other. That's nice. Oh, never mind. So yeah, I'm going to go. I'm gonna go get some dinner. I am starving. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day, and I will see you all on Discord, Facebook, Messenger, and all the fun places.
Yeah, so thank you very much for the memento help. I got one.
Yay! Excellent.
So
Okay,
thank you
good.
very much to everyone, and I really enjoyed it, and I try to be here again next week.
Excellent. Okay, guys. Thank you. See you all next week.
Good night.
Or Saturday, even.
Diana, thanks for the history on New York. That was fun to hear.
That was very fun. To both of you, thank you for chatting about that.
You're welcome.
Okay, folks. Good night.